This is Blair from TeamTragicFuture doing a deck profile on my Dark World deck that I went 4-1 with at my locals. We'll here get started. Of course, 3 Grappa, of course, that you need these things to even run the deck. And then 3 Brow, of course, drawing with the discarding, drawing a +1. And then 3 Snow, the Searchers. Of course, you discard one with one of the effects and you get to add a Dark World card to your hand, like Gates or Grappa. Run 2 Trance Archfiends because a lot of stuff gets removed in this deck against in Game 2 and Game 3, and even Game 1 when you have your Gates removing things with their effects. And these things, when they get destroyed and removed from the field, you get to add one of the removed cards back. I like to recycle Gores a lot too because I'll remove him and then I'll keep adding them back to my hand along with Graphas and just some other things that get more draw power. And then I run 2 of these, 2 Beiges. The reason why I run 2 is I like it because it helps me with Graph a lot, because I'll end up with like a couple things that can discard stuff, and then I'll just if I have like 2 Graphas in grave, I'll use an effect, summon him, bounce him back, use another card, he gets right back out, and then it's 2 Graphas just by having this one monster in your hand. It's really good to do. It's really good late game when you don't have too much like monsters left in your deck, and then this thing you can just get it recycled back to your hand repeatedly for basically no cost. And then I run 1 Gorse, of course, get to recycle this thing half the time. The only problem is sometimes the Gates gets in the way, but usually people like to destroy that thing right off the bat, and even some of my traps get in the way, but they usually destroy them before this gets a real problem in my hand. And I run 1 Malefic Stardust. It's really good because of those Space Typhoons and some of the other things people are running now to try to destroy my field spells. And next with the spells and traps, well, the spells first. 3 Gates of the Dark World. Of course, these things are staples in a Dark World deck. You get to banish 1 engrave, discard a card, draw a card, and if you discard Snow, you get to search afterwards or draw an extra card with Brow. Next are 3 Drag Downs. These things are really good against a lot of matchups because you can look at each other's hands and you get to pick one of their things that they probably really need, like a Monster Reborn, Dark Hole, and heck, even like things like Spirit Reapers and stuff that your Graphas just can't get over regularly. You do that when you put down all your important cards, you just have just Dark Worlds that you can get their effects off, and they have to discard one of your Dark Worlds then, so you get your effects and you draw one after everything happens. The next thing is I actually run 3 Dark World dealings too. It speeds up the deck a lot because you can draw one and then you can pick any one and discard it, and sometimes your opponent doesn't like it too much because they're trying to save all their good stuff in their hand, and they'll just like try to play conservatively and just put down some of their spells and traps, or put down one of the monsters just to see what happens. But sometimes it does hurt you because sometimes you'll be playing Dino Rabbit and they'll just discard their vanilla monsters, and then they'll get things like DD Crow, which kind of happened to me earlier today. Next, I run 1 Card Destruction. This card I feel is still good because it's just so good when you get this in the beginning of the game and you have 3 or 4 Dark Worlds in hand, because I got to use that today and it helped out a lot. Next is 1 Foolish Burial. Really good if you get it in the beginning because you can bring out Grapha first turn if you have just 1 Dark World in hand. Foolish Burial, send Grapha to grave, bounce back that Dark World, and you have like a 2,700 or a 3,000 attack monster on the field first turn. Then, Allure Darkness. this is another thing that's really good with Trance Archfiend too, because you can use Allure of Darkness, discard something like Gores, which might be dead at the moment, and then you can use Trance Archfiend later to just get it back. And you draw 2 cards, and you're probably going to get that removed from play card back later, so it doesn't even hurt you if you use some of your Dark Worlds for the removal for this card. Next, of course, it's the 3 main staples and everything. Dark Hole, Heavy Storm, Monster Reborn. Of course, these things are pretty much, everyone knows why those things are run. Next are my traps. I have 3 Reckless. I feel these things are really good in the deck since it has so much draw power. You can draw into your gates, you can draw into your drag downs, your Dark Hole dealings, your card destruction, your allures, anything you need. You can top deck a Monster Reborn by using Reckless, and you can bring back one of your brows and then bounce that brow right back to your hand, bring out a Grapha, use more effects, and just keep drawing out of control. And the drawing 2 turns doesn't really affect you too much. I run 1 Skill Drain just because sometimes you go against decks that Skill Drain doesn't really affect too well, and Dark Worlds are pretty powerful even without this, so I usually just side in a second one for game 2 if I really need it, and if I don't, I just side it out, because having more than one, I think it takes up too much room if it's dead, so that's why I run 1. And of course I run 1 Starlight Road. It's really good, of course, because you need all the protection you need for back rows, because you have to get everything out of your hand so you can use those Dark Worlds effects with your drag downs. And the next card, I run 1 Torrential because 2 sometimes doesn't really help you because you have a lot of monsters on the field and you need a lot of the cards that can help you draw or get over your opponent's monsters or discard their hand. 1 Solemn Judgment. Of course, this is really good. You can negate anything by paying half your life points. I also run 2 Mind Crushes. These things are really good also because of the fact that you can look at their hand with the drag downs and even with some of the other cards in the deck, and if you even have 2 down at the same time, it's even better because you might only know one of their cards. You Mind Crush it to get rid of those. Next Mind Crush, pick the card you just learned about, and it's really good. And it's really messed up in some decks because you can just get rid of their only good cards that they have in their hand. And last trap card is Deck Devastation Virus. This card is really good against a lot of decks. Like, it's really good against wind-ups if you get it off, because a lot of their monsters have really low attack power. Even with Insectors, this hurts because they'll be trying to get their dragonflies, and this thing will just kill all their dragonflies so fast. The only thing they can get over with this is their hoppers and their centipedes. And that's my main deck. And here's what I sided today. I sided 3 Space Typhoons because sometimes you really need 3 Space Typhoons, because with some decks, if you see them siding in cards or they have a heavy trap lineup, they're usually, what they're siding in is usually Shadow Imprisoning Mirrors and Macrocosmoses, and you really need these to get over them, because the Graph effect is one of the only things in here that actually destroys monsters or cards even on the field. So this thing's very helpful in the game 2 and 3. Next, 2 DD Crows. These things are very good against Insectors and even a mirror match. Get rid of their Graphas, get rid of their Hornets, even Chaos Dragons, get rid of their Light Pulsars or anything else you need to get rid of in there. And just anything in general in the graveyard. 2 Bottomlesses. These things are also very good, even with the Dark World mirror match, just because you remove their Graphas when they summon them, or even if they're using heroes or something, you just do this on their Shining, it destroys and removes them from play. You do it on just about any monster with priority going to this thing, even has more power. even though I can't touch the lower monsters, use these against decks that have the big boss monsters that the little monsters can't really do too much without them. And next, to the smaller monsters, Chain Disappearance. This helps a lot with rabbit decks, Insectors, and a bunch of other popular decks right now. It just gets rid of tour guides, rabbits, everything small that Bottomless can't hit. Have one extra skill drain just for Insectors, windups, anything else that's a really effect heavy deck that can just go off and screw you over. I also run 2 Electric Virus. I run these against Chaos Dragons, dragons in general, in rabbit decks because you can take their Logia, Dolka, and everything like that, and you can just get their monster off their field just so you can do a big play. And with the gates and Graphas, they're pretty huge with that attack power. You just attack them and get over all their monsters. I run 1 Gozen Match. Gozen Match is actually really good in this deck because you have so many other traps that they need to get over, and you have gates, so they use a lot of their destruction power on those. And you pull out Gozen Match on them, and it just hurts any deck that's just not a full attribute of the same deck. It just hurts them a lot. The last thing is Royal Decree, because even though I run a lot of traps in this deck, it actually helps a lot because of the fact that they'll side in Shadow Imprisoning Mirrors, Macrocosmoses, and since I side into 3 Space Typhoons, I can get rid of this whenever I want, pretty much. Like, you just get this in the beginning, you can, or even late game, or mid game, you can just activate this and it just stops their stuff, and then they have to concentrate on killing this instead of your gates or any of your other important things, just so they can have a defense against you. Well, that's my side deck. I did have a Gellin Duo also in my side, but I traded that and a DT one for a bunch of cards at my locals and got some very good stuff. And my extra deck, even though I didn't get to have the chance to use these a lot because Dark Worlds don't really have too much field presence with their smaller monsters. It's usually you have Graphas on the field to get over them. I ran 1 Catastor because I could Monster Reborn into their Effect Veilers or something to get over if I need to, because sometimes Catastor is just a wall that some decks have slight trouble to get over these even at this time. And I have 1 Magical Android. It's just kind of in here to fill space, and it is a pretty good 5-star because you do gain life points from it and it helps sometimes. Of course, Brionic, this thing's always good. It can help me get stuff in the graveyard even though the effects don't go off, but it still helps a lot because you can just bounce things. And even though Exceed Summoning is very popular these days, this, with the other people's tuners, this can still get out in the field. Run 2 Stardust. Of course, 1 Stardust for the Malefic and 1 Stardust for the Starlight Road. Need 2 of these to be able to do your plays. I run 1 number 17 Leviathan Dragon. Of course, I have some level 3s in here, and I can even bring back one of their level 3s so I can overlay and detach and attack them. It's a good monster. I have 1 Submersible Carrier Arrow Shark. This thing is good against some decks if a lot of your stuff is removed, and all you can do is summon little monsters because you can't use your effects. And if they have low life points, this thing could really do well because you just attach and inflict 100 to them for every banished monster of yours. And next I have these little guitar things. They're really good. I have 2 in here just to fill space because these don't really use too much of an extra deck. They're really good. You detach one, you double its attack, so it has 3,000, and you can hit them with that without having to bring out an Acid Golem if you don't have a skill drain out in the field. Because Acid Golem without the skill drain kind of hurts you pretty bad if they can stop it. I have 2 Maelstrokes of the Symphony. These things are really good. They're kind of like a gotchi, and sort of like even a Book of the Moon also, because it can flip monsters face down. I do have snows in here. I have some other things I can bring back out to help this. I got those beiges. So this I actually brought this out a couple times, and it gave me time to get over their monsters and their cards. And I also have 2 Utopias and a Utopia Ray. Of course, Utopia Ray in case I get low life points, and also sometimes I can bring back their stuff. But 2 Utopias just because their negation is actually very good, and sometimes you need it over this thing. In my last card in my extra deck, 1 Acid Golem. Of course, you have to have this thing in here. I have Skill Drain, so if you have Skill Drain out, it's a very useful card. Because you have Skill Drain out, you don't have to detach, and if they kill it, you still got 2 turns. Well, this is my Darkhold deck profile. Hope you liked it. Rate, subscribe, and like. TeamTragicFuture.